Now let's move on to array-based cloning, and this is all the various forms of array-based cloning. Okay, any of you get a chance to sit in to the session yesterday afternoon right after lunch? It was with Uday Bapani, I think was his last name. I apologize if I mangled that too bad, and Larry Touche on the cloning enhancements. Okay, so you're looking at that. A lot of the stuff you're going to see here is as of today. Okay, ONTAP 7.3.1 was the basis for all the stuff that they're doing, which is due for release very soon, but prior to that, these sort of limitations come in. Now, once these array-based cloning enhancements come out, when we talk about file-level flex clones and clones without backing snapshots, that sort of thing, then some of these limitations will go away. Some of them will not. But just keep in mind as we go through this, this is as of today. So one of the biggest limitations we have around this cloning is that we have a lack of virtual center integration. Okay, we can clone from the array, but that cloning at the array level doesn't do anything in the VI environment. Okay, and what that means then is that we can't use Virtual Center to do our VM provisioning tasks. Server admins can't just go into Virtual Center and right-click and say, I need a new VM, or I need to clone a VM off an existing one. Okay, we can't apply the sysprep integration that's built into Virtual Center. We can't use the customization specifications that come out of that VC integration. Okay, so we have to do all these steps extra. They have to be done outside of Virtual Center, outside of the solution. In addition, as some sessions have pointed out already, when you clone VM files, there's more to it than that. There's more than just copying files. We have to do some other pieces as well. We have to register these VMs so they'll show up in the environment. Now, if you've been following the announcements around VMworld, you know that back at VMworld they announced this whole new set of APIs, including one called the vStorage APIs, which are designed to open up their platform to storage vendors to allow them to take advantage of advanced functionality. We anticipate that the finalization and the release of the vStorage APIs will eliminate this particular concern. And there are other tools we'll talk about in a moment that also help address this concern. But this is something to keep in mind. You can go in and you can talk about how we can use flex clones or we can use file level flex cloning to create VMs, but without addressing some of the other procedural issues or considerations, you haven't given the customer a complete solution. You've only given them part of a solution. Now, why is this lack of Virtual Center integration a problem? Because it creates an operational shift in responsibility. Okay? Who handles the cloning process? Anybody? Yeah, okay, the storage team handles the cloning responsibility. Okay? So what happens is when you start putting in these cloning functionalities, you've shifted operational responsibility from the server admins to the storage admins. Now the storage admins get involved in every single VM provisioning task. Well, they're busy enough as it is, or maybe they aren't because their storage is so simple with NetApp, right? We don't really want to get involved in some sort of political or organizational reshifting of responsibility like this. Okay? It doesn't really make sense for the storage team to be involved in provisioning VMs. That's really something that belongs with the server team. Okay? So when you do cloning outside of this Virtual Center integration, we end up with this procedural shift, this operational shift in responsibility between the server team and the storage team. And that's something we want to avoid. And this consideration applies to all the various forms of cloning that we look at. So whether it be LUN cloning, whether it be volume level flex cloning, whether it be file level flex cloning, they all have this consideration to keep in mind. Okay? Now, as I move forward, I want to take a closer look at some of the specific cloning technologies. And keep in mind, as I talk about this, I am an outsider, if you will, outside NetApp, so I don't have access to all the latest and greatest cool stuff. So I wasn't able to prepare in advance for the changes about ONTAP 7.3.1 and no need for backing snapshots and all that wonderful jazz. So this is as of today. LUN cloning, okay? The ability to clone a LUN off a backing snapshot within a flexible volume, okay? It's a great idea. It's free. It's functionality. It's included in ONTAP without any additional license, okay? It's typically used for short-term purposes. Maybe you need to recover data out of the LUN, something of that nature, okay? But there's a problem when we start doing LUN cloning with VI3, okay? And that is the idea of a VMFS signature. And without changing that VMFS signature, these cloned LUNs aren't going to be visible to VI3. No matter how many times we clone it, no matter what we do, even if we present it appropriately to the right I groups, it's still not going to show up. ESX is just going to ignore it. And we have to fix that by enabling something called VMFS resignaturing. Now, what is the VMFS signature and what is resignaturing? Well, VMware ESX has multiple VMFS volumes that it has to manage. And it uses a signature in that VMFS volume to distinguish one volume from another. When it sees a volume with an identical signature to a volume it already knows about, it ignores that additional volume. So if you clone a LUN, using a LUN cloning, or any other method, and we'll talk about that as we get into flex clones, without changing this signaturing method, those clones just don't even show up. You can rescan all day long, and you're not going to see them. So what you have to do is you have to go in and enable an option. It's in the advanced settings, lvm.enable resignature. You have to set that to 1. And that can be done either in the virtual center GUI, or you can use the command line if you're a command line kind of guy, esxconfig-advconfig to set this option. Set that to 1, do a rescan. At that point then, the ESX servers will see the additional cloned LUNs. They'll have snap in the name. Okay, so it knows that it's or it anticipates that it's a snapshot. It doesn't really have any sort of NetApp awareness, but it says, hey, this is a copy of something I've already seen, so I'm going to assume it's a snapshot of some sort. And at that point then, you can resignature that volume and bring it into use. And it's recommended that you set that back to 0 after you're done so that you don't inadvertently resignature a LUN when you didn't necessarily intend to resignature a LUN. So this resignaturing requires that we do this before we can see these LUNs. So this is an additional change that we have to make in order to see the LUNs. As we mentioned earlier, with all forms of cloning today, without additional tools, there's no VC integration. So we can't apply sysprep, we can't do customization specifications, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to rehash that. In addition, again, as of today, we have a backing snapshot that handles this LUN clone, and it sits inside the same flexible volume as the original upon which it's based. So this puts multiple LUNs inside a single flexible volume. What this means is that you could run into an issue where you have a locked snapshot because you have a clone based on a snapshot that is then included in a snapshot. Okay? So you've locked something that is in turn based on a snapshot, and now you have to go back and undo that, kind of unravel the knot. To get around that, of course, you could disable scheduled snapshots, which you would typically do in a LUN environment anyway, but this is something to keep in mind. In addition, the other things like, I can't snapshot the original LUN, but not the clones, or I can't use a different schedule for the LUN clones versus the original, all that kind of stuff. That's just kind of standard fare. They all sit in the same flexible volume, so they all share the same snapshot schedule. All right, so what about flex clones?